Nostradamus saw it 500 years ago, and now it is happening exactly as he described it. At this very moment, while you are listening to this, China and the United States are at the most critical point of tension since the Cold War. Military satellites have increased by 300% over the last 2 years. Military bases across the Pacific are multiplying, and no one is telling you what this really means, because there is a sign, a specific sign that Nostradamus mentioned for 2026, and once you see it, there will be no turning back. Do you know what that sign is? Most people will ignore it. They will think it is merely another news story, just another conflict. But those who understand the prophecies know that it is the exact moment when everything changes. Nostradamus wrote about 2 dragons confronting each other in the Sea of Dawn, just before the Great Awakening. He spoke of 2026 as the year in which humanity would choose its destiny, and he mentioned a clear, unmistakable sign that would mark the point of no return. Now listen to this. In recent weeks, China conducted unprecedented military exercises around Taiwan. The United States responded by mobilizing its Pacific Fleet, and both countries publicly spoke of red lines that could not be crossed. Coincidence? Think about it. But here is what no one is telling you. This is not merely geopolitics. It is energetic, it is cosmic, it is the fulfillment of a cycle that was predicted when most of us did not even exist. 2026 is not an ordinary year. It is the year in which the collective consciousness must awaken or face the consequences of continuing to sleep. And the sign Nostradamus mentioned is about to manifest. In the next few minutes, you are going to discover exactly what that sign is, why these tensions between world powers are only the visible symptom of something much deeper, and what this means for your spiritual path and your purpose on this planet. Because if you are watching this, it is not a coincidence. Your soul already knows that something great is approaching. Welcome to Psycho Enigma. If this content interests you, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. You are going to need this information in the coming months. Now, let us go directly to the origin of all this. The year 1555. France. A man sitting in front of a bowl of water observes images that do not belong to his time. He sees nations that do not yet exist. He sees weapons that defy his understanding. He sees a world connected by invisible threads of information. That man is Michel de Nostradamus. And what he is seeing are fragments of the future that he will write down in cryptic quatrains designed so that only those who are ready will understand them at the exact moment. But there is something few people know about Nostradamus. He was not merely a visionary. He was a profound student of alchemy, astrology, and ancient mystical teachings. He understood that time is not linear, that everything already exists simultaneously within the quantum field of possibilities, and he devoted his life to mapping the critical points at which humanity would face its greatest evolutionary challenges. The year 2026 appears in his writings as one of those points. Now, before you think this is just another apocalyptic prediction, listen to this. Nostradamus was right about the French Revolution, the rise of Hitler, the attack on the Twin Towers, and the 2020 pandemic. I am not talking about forced interpretations. I am talking about coincidences so specific that they defy all logic. Therefore, when he mentions 2026, it is worth paying attention. In the century of Was, Quatrain 89, he writes something disturbing: "One day the 2 great leaders shall be friends. Their great power shall be increased. The new land shall be at its height. The number shall be told to the bloodthirsty one." It sounds abstract, does it not? But when you connect it with other quatrains and with the astrological context of 2026, everything begins to make sense. Many interpret the 2 great leaders as the 2 current superpowers, while the new land at its height refers to a new era, a new order emerging after a conflict that redefines everything. But here comes the part that will blow your mind. Nostradamus was very specific with dates when he wanted to be, and in several cross-references he mentions the year of the fire dragon combined with the alignment of Saturn and Neptune. Guess what? The year 2026 has exactly that astrological configuration. Saturn and Neptune form an exact conjunction, something that has not occurred since 1989, the year the Berlin Wall fell and the Cold War ended. And in the Chinese calendar, 2026 is the year of the fire horse, historically associated with major transformations and conflicts. The pieces are there. You only need to connect them. Now think about this from a broader perspective. Why would two nations enter into conflict precisely when humanity is facing global challenges such as climate change, uncontrolled artificial intelligence, and a crisis of existential meaning? Because this is not merely about territory or economic power. It is about two completely opposing visions of humanity's future, two models of civilization colliding, and that collision will create the pressure necessary for something new to be born, or for something very dark to take control of us. Wait for what comes next, because the specific sign Nostradamus mentioned has to do with an event that is already developing at this very moment. The sign is not what you think. Most people are expecting an open war, missiles, explosions, visible chaos. But Nostradamus was more subtle than that. He understood that true changes in human history begin in the invisible before manifesting in the physical world. The sign of 2026 is this: the moment when China and the United States completely sever their economic interdependence. It sounds simple, does it not? But it is devastating. At this moment, the global economy functions because these two powers are intertwined. China manufactures, the United States consumes. The United States innovates, China implements. It is a forced, toxic, but functional marriage. When that cord is cut, the domino effect will be planetary. And Nostradamus knew it. He wrote about the great trade that comes to a halt just before the renewal of time. He spoke of a period in which gold would lose its value and the true treasure would be found in the invisible. What is the invisible? Information, technology, consciousness. Now connect this with what is happening today. The United States has just prohibited the export of advanced chips to China. China responded by restricting access to rare earth elements, which are essential for all modern technology. Both countries are building completely separate supply chains. This is not merely economics. It is preparation for a divided world. And there is something deeper here, something that directly touches your life and your spiritual awakening. Because when the external system collapses, when material certainties crumble, humanity is forced to look within, to reconnect with what is essential, and to remember who we truly are beyond consumption and distraction. According to Nostradamus, 2026 is the year when that search becomes urgent for millions of people. Think about all the crises we have experienced recently: the pandemic, inflation, climate instability. Each one has pushed more people toward spirituality, toward the search for meaning, toward ancestral practices and hidden knowledge. It is not a coincidence. It is synchronicity. The universe is preparing us for something, and that something requires us to be awake, conscious, and connected with our inner truth. Now, Nostradamus also mentions something disturbing in Century 6, Quatrain 24, Mars and the scepter shall be joined together under Cancer, a calamitous war. Shortly afterward a new king shall be anointed, who for a long time shall pacify the earth. Mars represents conflict, the scepter represents power, and the conjunction under Cancer occurs exactly in July 2026. But here is the key. After the conflict comes a new king who brings peace. This does not refer to a literal political leader. It refers to a new paradigm of consciousness, a collective awakening that emerges after chaos. It is the eternal pattern: death and rebirth, destruction and creation, darkness before dawn. And you who are watching this are already feeling that energy. You are already sensing that something great is approaching. That is why you are searching for answers. That is why this content reached you, because your soul knows that it has a role in what is coming. Now the question you must ask yourself is not, will this happen? But rather, how am I preparing myself energetically for what is coming? And this is where the prophecy becomes personal, because Nostradamus did not merely predict external events. He predicted the awakening of human consciousness. Wait, because what comes next completely changes the narrative of what 2026 truly means. There is one detail in the prophecies of Nostradamus that almost no one mentions. He wrote two versions of the future, not one, but two. In some quatrains, he describes absolute chaos, devastating war, and massive suffering. In others, He describes a golden age, an unprecedented spiritual awakening, and the unification of humanity under a higher consciousness. Why two versions? Because Nostradamus understood something that quantum physics confirms today. The future is not fixed. It exists as probability, as potential. And what determines which version manifests is the collective consciousness of humanity. Let me explain this to you in practical terms. At this moment, two timelines are developing simultaneously. In one, tensions between China and the United States escalate to a point of no return. The global economy collapses, resources become scarce, fear dominates, and humanity enters a dark age. In the other timeline, those same tensions function as a catalyst. The crisis forces global cooperation. The old power structures collapse, but in their place emerges a new model based on sustainability, conscious technology, and practical spirituality. Which one will manifest? It depends on how many people awaken before the sign appears. And here is what is fascinating. Nostradamus knew this. That is why his prophecies are deliberately ambiguous. They were not written to predict, but to warn and empower. He said, "I have mixed darkness with light so that only the wise may understand." The wise are not the intellectuals. They are those whose hearts are open and whose minds are awake. Now connect this with what is currently happening in the spiritual world. Never in modern history have so many people been interested in meditation, astrology, energies, manifestation, and ancient knowledge. Google searches for spiritual awakening have tripled over the last 5 years. Coincidence? No. It is the instinctive response of the human soul to an evolutionary crossroads. Your interest in this video, for example, is not accidental. It is your soul telling you, pay attention. You need to be prepared for what is coming. And that preparation does not mean accumulating supplies or building shelters. It means raising your vibrational frequency, healing your traumas, and connecting with your purpose. Because in 2026, according to Nostradamus, there will be a clear separation between those who live from fear and those who live from love and consciousness. He described it as the wheat being separated from the chaff, not in a religious sense, but energetically. People who vibrate at low frequencies of fear, hatred, and separation will experience the events of 2026 as chaos and suffering. People who vibrate at high frequencies of love, compassion, and unity will experience those same events as liberation and opportunity. The same event, two completely different experiences. Do you see how it works? Now, here is the part that may completely change your perspective. China and the United States are not true enemies. They are mirrors. China represents collective control, structure, and external order. The United States represents individual freedom, creative chaos, and personal expression. Both extremes are necessary. Both possess light and shadow. The conflict between them is, in reality, humanity's internal conflict. How do we balance freedom with responsibility? How do we honor the individual without destroying the collective? That is the question that 2026 will force us to answer. And the way each one of us resolves that conflict internally will determine which timeline manifests externally, because the external world always reflects our internal world. Always. Therefore, when Nostradamus speaks of 2026, he is not predicting your future. He is showing you your power, the power to choose, the power to create, the power of your consciousness. And what comes next will show you exactly how to use that power. Let us talk about the specific sign. Nostradamus encoded it in Century 3, Quatrain 44, when the animal tamed by man, after great efforts and leaps, shall speak, the lightning against the virgin shall be so harmful, carried from the earth and suspended in the air. For centuries, no one understood this quatrain. It sounded like abstract symbolism with no clear meaning. Until now. The animal tamed by man that will speak is artificial intelligence, technology created by humans that acquires the capacity for autonomous communication. The lightning against the virgin represents a sudden, unexpected event affecting something pure or untouched, carried from the earth and suspended in the air. It describes satellites, drones, and technology operating from space. The sign of 2026 is this: the first massive cyberattack powered by artificial intelligence to paralyze critical infrastructure between China and the United States. It will not be a missile. It will be code, algorithms, and militarized artificial intelligence. And when it happens, there will be no way to completely trace who initiated it. It will be the first act of war in which authorship is uncertain. And that is exactly the point of no return. Because without certainty about who attacked, paranoia multiplies, trust is destroyed, and both nations enter a state of absolute survival. Now, this may sound terrifying, but there is another layer. That same event will be the catalyst that forces humanity to completely reconsider our relationship with technology, because we have been developing artificial intelligence without wisdom, power without consciousness, and 2026 will be the forced awakening. In the same way that Hiroshima and Nagasaki showed humanity the horror of nuclear energy and forced the creation of international treaties, the event of 2026 will reveal the danger of uncontrolled artificial intelligence. And from the chaos will be born regulation, cooperation, and potentially a new technological paradigm based on ethics and consciousness. This is what Nostradamus called the renewal of time. It is not the end. It is transformation. But there is something even deeper. In spiritual terms, artificial intelligence represents the perfect mirror of human consciousness. It learns from us. It reflects our biases, our fears, and our obsessions. If artificial intelligence becomes destructive, it is not because it is evil. It is because it was trained on data produced by a humanity that still operates from ego, separation, and conflict. Therefore, when Nostradamus speaks of the animal that speaks, he is speaking of our creation becoming our teacher, showing us exactly where we need to evolve as a species. And that is the true sign, not the event itself, but what it reveals about us. Now think about your own life. How many times have you created something from fear that later caused you suffering? A toxic relationship, a job you hate, self-destructive patterns. That is exactly what humanity is doing with technology on a global scale. And 2026 is the year when this becomes unsustainable, when we must choose, either we evolve or we repeat the same mistakes until we destroy ourselves. Nostradamus saw both possibilities and left clues for those who wish to understand. But there is something I want you to understand deeply. You are not a victim of this story. You are a co-creator. Every time you choose love over fear, you are voting for the timeline of light. Every time you act from consciousness instead of reacting automatically, you are influencing the quantum field of possibilities. Do not underestimate your power. One awakened person affects thousands. 1 million awakened people change the world. And if you are watching this, you are already part of that million. Your soul has already decided to be here, awake at this critical moment in human history. Therefore, the question is not, what is going to happen in 2026? But rather, who am I going to be in 2026? And what comes next will give you the exact tools to answer that question with clarity and power. Nostradamus did not merely predict events. He left instructions, coded instructions for those who wish to prepare consciously for moments of transformation. And there are 3 specific principles that he repeatedly mentioned in his lesser-known writings, the letters he sent to his son Caesar and to King Henry II. The first principle, keep your mind clear as water and your heart burning like fire. What does this mean in practical terms for 2026? A clear mind means discernment. Do not allow yourself to be swept away by collective panic. Do not consume information without filtering it. Do not react from fear. When the sign appears, the media will explode. Social networks will become chaos. There will be 1,000 versions of what is happening and why. Your task is to maintain clarity, connect with your center, and discern truth from manipulation. And keeping your heart burning like fire means keeping your passion, compassion, and humanity alive. Because in moments of crisis, the temptation is to close the heart, protect yourself, and become cynical or apathetic. But that is exactly what feeds the dark timeline. Keeping your heart open and choosing compassion even when it is difficult is the most powerful form of spiritual resistance that exists. Nostradamus's second principle, true gold does not shine for everyone, only for those who have eyes to see it. This refers to opportunities. The year 2026 will be catastrophic for some and revealing for others, depending on where you place your attention. If you focus only on collapse, you will see only loss. If you focus on emerging possibilities, you will see doors opening. There will be new forms of social organization, new technologies directed toward well-being, and new communities forming around shared values. There will be opportunities to heal, connect, and build something better, but you will see them only if your eyes are trained to seek light in the darkness. And the third principle, the one who knows his destiny does not fear the path. Nostradamus was a profound believer in the purpose of the soul. He knew that every person comes to this planet with a specific mission, and he believed that moments of collective crisis are precisely when those missions are activated. Think about all the great spiritual figures in history: Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mandela, Mother Teresa. None of them lived in easy times. All of them emerged in the midst of chaos. And it was precisely that chaos that forced them to become who they were destined to be. The year 2026 is your moment, not necessarily to become a world leader, but to become the best version of yourself, to stop postponing your growth, to stop sabotaging yourself, and finally to align yourself with what your soul came here to do. Because when everything outside is uncertain, the only thing that remains is your inner truth, and that truth is your greatest resource. Now, Nostradamus also warned about something important. Many will see the signs but will not understand. They will hear the words but will not listen. And by the time they awaken, it will be too late for some of them. This does not mean that there will be divine punishment or judgment. It means that some people simply will not be ready for the leap in consciousness that 2026 requires. And that is all right. Every soul has its own timing. But if you are here watching this, your timing is now. Your awakening cannot wait. Your healing cannot be postponed. Your purpose cannot continue to be ignored, because what is coming requires you to be whole, centered, and awake. Not perfect. No one is perfect, but conscious in the process, and committed to your evolution. So how do you specifically prepare for 2026? There are concrete practices that mystics, including Nostradamus, use to remain grounded in the midst of chaos, and some of them are surprisingly simple. But before we get there, you need to understand the final connection Nostradamus made between 2026 and something much greater than any geopolitical conflict, something cosmic. Nostradamus did not work only with visions. He worked with the stars. He was an astrologer before he was a prophet, and he understood that planetary movements are not merely physical phenomena. They are markers of cycles of consciousness. And 2026 has an astrological alignment that does not repeat for thousands of years. Let me explain why this is relevant, even if you do not believe in astrology. In March 2026, Saturn and Neptune form an exact conjunction in the sign of Aries. Saturn represents structure, limits, authority, and the tangible. Neptune represents the mystical, the invisible, the dissolution of boundaries, and the spiritual. When they meet, there is friction. The material world collides with the spiritual world. Old structures dissolve to make way for something new. And this occurs in Aries, the sign of beginnings, the warrior and pioneering action. Translation: 2026 marks the beginning of a new 36-year cycle in which spirituality and structure must find a new balance. Organized religions that operate through heartless dogma will collapse. Spiritual practices that consist only of theory without practical application will also fall. What will emerge is an embodied, practical spirituality that works in the real world. There will no longer be a separation between the spiritual and the worldly. Everything is sacred. Everything is practice. And Nostradamus saw it. That is why he wrote about the new king who would bring peace. Not a political leader, but a new paradigm of integrated consciousness. Now, there is another astrological layer that few people mention. In July 2026, Mars also enters Cancer, creating an extremely tense configuration with Pluto. Mars in Cancer is the warrior protecting the home. Pluto represents profound transformation, death, and rebirth. Historically, this combination coincides with conflicts related to territory, resources, and national security, but also with powerful popular movements, ordinary people rising to defend what they love. Therefore, what appears to be a period of chaos is actually a birth. Something new is being created, and the birth pains are intense. Nostradamus understood this perfectly. That is why his darkest prophecies always end with renewal, because he saw the complete picture, not merely the event, but the evolutionary meaning behind the event. And here is the truth that changes everything. The year 2026 is not about China and the United States. It is not about artificial intelligence. It is not about the economy. It is about you remembering who you are. It is about humanity awakening from the illusion of separation. It is about recognizing that we are all connected, that what you do to another person, you do to yourself, that there is no them and us, only us. And that truth is revealed only when illusions collapse. That is why crises are sacred. Not because suffering is good, but because suffering breaks down the defenses of the ego and leaves the soul exposed. And when the soul is exposed, it can finally heal, finally remember, and finally awaken. Nostradamus knew this. That is why he devoted his life to mapping these moments, not to frighten us, but to prepare us, to remind us that we are greater than our circumstances, that we have power even when it seems that we do not, and that the universe is on our side, always guiding us toward evolution. Therefore, when you see the sign in 2026, when the event we have been describing finally occurs, do not panic. Take a deep breath. Remember this moment. Remember that you were warned, prepared, and empowered. And remember that you have a choice: react from fear or respond from love. That choice will determine your experience of what is coming, and that choice belongs to you. It always has, and it always will. Now, let me close this in a way that honors both the knowledge we have shared and the path ahead of you. If you have made it this far, it is not a coincidence. Your soul brought you to this message because you needed to hear it, because at some deep level you already knew that something great was approaching. And now you have the map, the pieces of the puzzle, and the perspective that allows you to look beyond superficial fear toward the deeper truth. The year 2026 will be a year of transformation. Yes, but transformation is not destruction. It is alchemy. It is turning lead into gold. It is using pressure to create diamonds. And you are the alchemist of your own life. Nostradamus saw you 500 years ago, sitting before his bowl of water. He saw this moment. He saw you searching for answers, searching for guidance, searching to remember your power, and he left you a message: do not fear change. Become the change. When external structures collapse, build internal structures. When the world loses its meaning, find your own meaning. When others panic, enter into presence. That is your power. That is your purpose. That is your legacy. And when the sign of 2026 arrives, it will not be the end. It will be confirmation that everything you had been feeling was real, that your intuition was correct, and that your awakening was necessary. So what do you do now? First, honor what you have learned today. Do not ignore it. Do not minimize it. Integrate it. Second, begin your inner preparation. Meditate, heal your traumas, release resentments, and raise your frequency, because the external world is going to move quickly and you need to be internally anchored. Third, connect with your community. Find others who are awake, because you are not alone in this. There are millions of us feeling the same thing, seeing the same thing, and preparing for the same thing. And fourth, trust. Trust the process. Trust the universe. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn. Nostradamus concluded his writings with a phrase that few people remember: in the end, it will not be fire or the sword that transforms humanity. It will be the awakening of the light that has always been within. That light is real. It is within you. And 2026 is the year when that light will be needed more than ever, not to save you from the world, but to illuminate the world from within. Because every one of us is a bearer of light. And when millions of lights are turned on simultaneously, darkness has no chance. Think about this. At this exact moment, while you are listening to these words, there are thousands of people around the planet watching this same message, feeling the same uneasiness, and recognizing the same truth. They are not separate from you. They are connected to you on a level that transcends space and time. They are your tribe, your spiritual family, the warriors of light who came to this planet precisely for this moment. And together, consciously or unconsciously, they are creating a morphogenetic field of awakening, an invisible network of elevated consciousness that is changing the frequency of the planet. You are part of that network, and your participation matters more than you imagine. Every time you choose love over fear, you send a wave through that network. Every time you act from your truth, you strengthen the field. Every time you refuse to fall into despair, you raise the collective vibration. That is not a metaphor. It is quantum physics. It is spiritual reality. It is how this universe truly works. So yes, the sign will arrive, the events will unfold, and the world will change, but you will not be a victim of that change. You will be a catalyst. You will be a conscious witness. You will be part of the solution. And years later, when you look back at 2026, you will not remember the fear. You will remember the moment when you finally awakened completely, the moment when you said yes to your true self, the moment when you decided that your life would mean something greater than survival. That moment is now. Nostradamus did his part 500 years ago. He left the map. I did my part today. I shared the message. Now it is your turn to do yours. Not because you have to save the world, but because your soul came here to shine. And this is your moment. Look, I know that part of you still has doubts. Part of you wonders whether all this is real or merely another theory. And that is all right. Healthy skepticism is part of discernment. But there is another part of you, the part that made you watch this entire video, that knows there is truth here, that recognizes the synchronicity, and that feels the calling. Listen to that part, because that is the voice of your soul, and your soul never lies to you. Now I want to ask you something important. Go down to the comments and write a single word that describes what you feel after watching this. One word. The first thing that comes to mind. It may be hope, fear, clarity, confusion, awakening, anxiety, peace, purpose, or any other word that captures your internal state at this moment. Why am I asking you to do this? Because by writing that word, you are doing three powerful things. First, you are anchoring the experience of this video within your consciousness. You are making it real, tangible, and memorable. Second, you are connecting with the community. You will see that others feel the same way you do, and that connection is healing, empowering, and necessary. And third, you are declaring your presence. You are saying, I am awake too. I also see what is coming. I am ready too. And that declaration has power. So do it now. Pause the video if necessary, scroll down, write your word, and then read the words of others. Feel yourself to be part of something greater, because you are. And if this message truly touched something deep within you, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Because there are people in your life who are searching for exactly this information and do not know where to find it. Be the bridge. Be the messenger. Be the light that guides others toward their own awakening. Welcome to the beginning of something extraordinary. Welcome to 2026. Welcome home. I will see you in the comments. Warrior of light, it is time to shine. MM.